17 past the hour on the Janet Mefferd Show. Well, we are all still awaiting a final decision from the Boy Scouts of America on whether or not homosexuals will be allowed as leaders or as troop members. But in the meantime, a coalition of Eagle Scouts and Scoutmasters and parents have put together a new organization to keep sex and politics out of the Boy Scouts of America. It is called onmyhonor.net. And joining us now is the initiative's founder, John Stemberger, who is also president of the Florida Family Policy Council. And we're just delighted he could be here. John, thank you so much for being with us today.
Jan, it's great to be with you.
Well, thank you. Now, I understand you're an Eagle Scout. You used to be a Scoutmaster. And how much has the Boy Scout organization meant to you over the years? I imagine quite a bit.
It's hard to describe. It's almost like a part of your fiber. For those that have really put their heart and soul into it and having children in it now, and it's almost like family in some ways. So it's a very distressing development that we've heard about here.
Right, absolutely. Now, it's interesting. A lot of us who are outside of the Boy Scouts, I had brothers who were Boy Scouts, but obviously I was a Girl Scout. But when we heard about this potential policy change, a lot of us were really bewildered because the Boy Scouts have had this policy in place for such a long time. And why in the world would they all of a sudden decide, wow, even though we've gone through a court battle on this, we're open to changing it? What do you make of this whole thing that they're willing to potentially cave on this issue?
Well, the bottom line is that Scouting is now having to take its own test of courage and bravery in the face of moral relativism. That's kind of the bottom line. They went through a 2-year study between 2010 and 2012. It's a confidential study, but it conclusively showed that the policy should remain the same and should not be changed. And so what's remarkable is that only months after reaffirming that policy, after a 2-year study, an intense study that involved law enforcement and all kinds of aspects, they then opened the table back up again. And it was primarily because of a couple of things. There were some liberal churches, primarily Episcopal churches, who now have openly gay priests and bishops. And they're basically saying, look, Scouting is now incompatible with our faith, quote unquote, because we can have an openly gay pastor, but yet he can't serve as a Scoutmaster. And so they're asking Scouting to now change to accommodate their newfound morals and values where they've shifted to the culture.
Wow.
And so our position is, look, you're free to change your doctrine and reinterpret Scripture to be popular and be more in line with the media and culture in Hollywood, but Scouting has timeless values. This is an institution that screams Americana. It has developed millions of boys into strong, courageous men, and so there's no obligation at all for Scouting to do that. If folks want to create another program that has less moral standards, they can do that, but we're just saying we don't want sex and politics in Scouting, and that's exactly what this thing. Here's an important point I want to make. Currently, there are people in Scouting who are probably homosexual. Mm-hmm. There's no litmus test, there's no witch hunt to find out who they are, but they're discreet, they're appropriate, they're personal, they're private. They're not loud and proud. They're not out there, waving the rainbow flag and trying to make a big deal about it, trying to promote gay marriage and all this business. And so, there's no application question on what your sexual orientation is when you go to join Scouting. The problem is now what they're allowing is open homosexuality. That's a very different thing. That is promoting the gay agenda. That is promoting politics. And it's just inappropriate. When it comes to children, we think that sex and politics should stay out of the Boy Scouts. It should have no place in it whatsoever.
Yep, good idea. Well, this initiative that you started, onmyhonor.net, tell us how this all came together.
Well, I became very concerned. I'm personal friends with one of the highest leaders in Scouting who assured me less than a year ago that everything was under control, the study was done, there was going to be no change, and they had it locked down. But when I learned that this happened, I just became very concerned. And my passion as an activist, my experience as an Eagle Scout, having children in the program, loving this program so much, I just really felt compelled that we need to organize. The Scouting right now says they're in a listening mode, and so we want folks to go to our website at onmyhonor.net. It's .net, onmyhonor.net, and send a message. We get email link to the emails that we have for some of the leaders that are going to be making the decision, and just plug into what we're doing. We have about 2 months to really make sure that this timeless institution is not transformed into some politicized thing like the Girl Scouts have, unfortunately, where it's being run by lesbians and promoting Planned Parenthood. It's just been really politicized. and sexualized in a way that's inappropriate for children.
Yep, absolutely right. So if people go to onmyhonor.net, they can get that link there and let the Boy Scouts know what your opinion is on this. So how did you get people together on this, John? Just out of curiosity, I know there are many, many people within the Scouting organization who agree with you. How did you gather together like-minded people to say, let's launch this organization?
Well, it's a bit of a trade secret, but I have connections all around the country with leaders, scout leaders, people involved with politics, and we just sent out an email saying we need people who don't agree with this, and there were tons of people. We had 13 states represented in just our press conference. I could have easily had 34 states. It would have been difficult for them to all speak and fly them all in at one press conference. Right.
Well, good for you. I think that's great. Now, I know you're raising awareness as well about the dangers that open homosexuality within the Scouting organization would present. What do you believe the biggest dangers would be if this policy were reversed and open homosexuality would be permitted in the Boy Scouts?
Well, my personal opinion, based upon my experience and talking to leaders all over the country and other scoutmasters, it is not going to be primarily adult gay men. Scouting has a very strict child protection program that requires 2 deep leadership. That means that no adult can be alone with any child except for their own child at any time. They're extremely strict with it. And so I don't think that the primary threat, although it could potentially be a threat, is going to be adults. I think it's going to be boy on boy. My sister is a middle school teacher in Florida, and she said, John, everybody in the whole class is talking about, are you gay? I'm gay. I'm gender confused. What are you? And it's just like they don't even know what they're talking about.
Right.
And it's hip, it's edgy to be gay, and so they're all saying they're gay. They have no idea. Well, when Scouting sends the message, we're open for gays. You're going to have so much nonsense going on between older boys and younger boys. It's just going to create a myriad of problems that really is going to result in further scandal, further disgrace to the Scouts, not to mention just the tragedy of the emotional, the sexual, psychological, and physical abuse that will occur in the program. And if even 2 children, even one child, Janet, is going to be molested by another boy in the program, that is enough compelling, in my judgment, to say, no, we are not going to do this. There's no reason for it whatsoever.
Yeah, and it seems really unfortunate when you guys say, really, we need to keep sex and politics out of the Boy Scouts. This is really detracting, it seems, from the mission of the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts has such a long, storied history, teaching men to be, clean, brave, thrifty, reverent. You could recite it better than I can. All the things that a good, noble boy ought to be and to grow into a noble man. When you start interjecting politics like this into it, it would seem to detract considerably from the whole mission of the Boy Scouts. In other words, now this is the focus instead of tying knots and going on campouts and learning what you're supposed to be learning?
Well, that's right. And I want to just bring the debate, really fine-tune it, because this is important. Currently, there's not an issue with no one's checking your sexual orientation at the door, okay? The phrase that everyone's all up in arms about prohibits an avowed or open homosexuality. Well, what is open? Well, open is promoting gay marriage. It's waving gay flags. It's trying to be loud and proud. And see, that's the problem. They want to aggressively promote open homosexuality. And that is completely and utterly inappropriate. So no one is trying to ban anyone. In fact, it's funny, every scout they're focusing on in national media are saying they're gay and they're in uniform, so the Eagle Scouts, so it's like, what are you talking about they ban gays? They don't ban gays. They ban gay activism. That's what they ban, and they should continue to ban that. And, to be in good faith here, the Scout leaders are trying to compromise. They're trying to find a way to keep the program together with the liberals in the Northeast and the conservatives elsewhere, but it's not going to work. They have to take this stand. They have to say to charter organizations, either you agree with Scouting values or you don't. And if you don't, you got to find another organization, because anything other than that is just going to cause the program to collapse eventually, just like Canadian Scouts had in 1988, or 98 rather, when they allowed atheists and gays in the program as well.
Interesting. So this is an interesting question for a lot of people who love the Scouts, which is, what would you do if this policy is changed, if they come out in May, as might be the case, and say, we're going to allow local organizations to have open homosexuality in their troops? I think this is how it was framed before, that they would leave it up to the local troops. What do you predict will happen if they pass that new policy?
Well, It's gonna first, you'll see a mass exodus of people. Parents are just going to say this is a risky proposition, even if they say each troop decides whether they're going to have open homosexuality. I mean, for the beauty of scouting right now is consistent values. There's one scout oath. There's one scout law. You know what the values are going to be in scouting. When they start opening it up, and I have to determine, as a parent, I have to determine, is this a gay troop or not a gay troop? It's going to undercut the legitimacy and the credibility of the scouting movement. And you will have, I've talked to hundreds of people. They say, we will lead. We'll pull our kids. I've talked to men, and their testimonies are on our website at onmyhonor.net. They're saying, look, I will send my Eagle badge back. This means nothing to me. If scouting abandons its principle, they say the only thing more important than scouting itself is the principles behind scouting. And so we're taking this very, very seriously. We believe that this will be the end of scouting as we know it if this change occurs. Look, the biggest chartered organizations are the LDS, the Mormon Church, first. Second is the Methodist Church. Third is the Catholic Church, and fourth is the Southern Baptists. The Southern Baptists have came out very, very strong against this change. The Methodists have also come out against this change. The United Methodist Church, the letter is on our site. A lot of people are saying, the Methodists are liberal on this, but actually they are not. They have taken a stand that they don't think this is good. And, of course, Catholics and the Mormons, they're waiting to see what the actual resolution says. It'll come out around the 17th of this month.
Boy. Well, and it's unfortunate because in the name of gay rights, you could see the unraveling of the Boy Scouts, which has been just such a phenomenal organization for so long. I really hope it doesn't come to that. But that's why I want people to go to your website, onmyhonor.net, and they can voice their concerns to the Boy Scouts. And tell me again, John, how much longer do people have to let the Boy Scouts know their thoughts?
Well, the timeline is that on the 17th, they're going to come up with a resolution. Might be no resolution at all. It might be a bad resolution, or it could be a good resolution. If it's a good resolution, we'll thank them and we'll encourage them, and we'll continue to throw our money and our support and our moral, weight behind the program.
Good.
But that's all going to happen on the 17th. Then on the 23rd of May, they're going to vote in Texas. In Grapevine, Texas, at a national convention. About 2,000 delegates will vote and make the final decision regarding any resolution that's proposed. Okay,
so everybody go on over to onmyhonor.net, get involved, tell the Scouts they should not change this policy. John Stemberger with us. Thank you so much, John, and I hope it goes our way.
Thank you, Janet.
Thanks a lot. We'll be back right after this.